The year was 2387. Deep in space, a large station called Nexus Prime floated between the stars. This was no ordinary place. It was the heart of galactic politics, where hundreds of alien species came together to make decisions that affected trillions of lives across the galaxy. For almost 200 years, humans had been part of this grand alliance called the Galactic Council. But they were not respected like the other races. The tall, blue-skinned Altarians looked down on them with cold eyes. The massive, armored Krillians laughed at human weakness. Even the small, quick Zathari whispered jokes about how soft humans were. Captain Jake Martinez walked down the metal halls of Nexus Prime that morning, just like he had done every day for the past 3 years. He was in charge of the human delegation here. At 45 years old, Jake had gray hair at his temples and tired eyes that had seen too many failed negotiations. Like most humans in diplomatic service, he had learned to smile when aliens insulted his species. He had learned to stay calm when they ignored human concerns. That was just how things worked in the galaxy. The humans were known as the peacekeepers. When two alien races went to war, they called for human mediators. When trade disputes happened, humans helped find solutions. When planets had refugees, humans organized the aid. They were useful in that way, but nobody feared them. Nobody respected their strength because most aliens believed humans had no real strength. Jake was reviewing reports in his small office when his communication device buzzed. The sound was urgent, different from normal calls. He pressed the button and saw the face of Colonel Steve Brown appear on the screen. Steve was back on Earth working at military headquarters. His face was pale and his hands were shaking. "Jake," Steve said, his voice cracking, "we have a situation, a big one." "What happened?" Jake asked, setting down his coffee cup. Something in Steve's tone made his stomach feel cold. "It's the Kepler colony," Steve whispered. "Kepler 442b, they're all gone, Jake. All of them." Jake felt the world stop moving. Kepler 442b was one of humanity's most beautiful colonies. Green fields, clean cities, happy families. 3 million people lived there. Men, women, children, elderly grandparents. It was supposed to be safe, protected by galactic law. "Gone how?" Jake asked, though he already feared the answer. "Orbital bombardment," Steve said. "Complete destruction. Every city, every town, every farm. The Krillian Empire did it. They said it was a demonstration of power during trade negotiations with the hegemony. They wanted to show they were serious about their demands." Jake stared at the screen. 3 million people. Families having breakfast that morning. Children playing in parks. Teenagers going to school. All dead in minutes because the Krillians wanted to make a point in some stupid trade deal. "Any survivors?" Jake asked. Steve shook his head. "None. The planet it's dead, Jake. Nothing left alive on the surface." Jake closed his eyes. He had friends on Kepler 442b. His old academy roommate, Bill Clark, had moved there with his wife and 2 kids 5 years ago. His cousin Rachel had just started a new job at the agricultural center. All gone. Within an hour, the news had spread through the human section of Nexus Prime. Jake watched his fellow humans receive the reports. He expected crying, shouting, the usual human emotions that aliens found so amusing. But something strange happened instead. The humans got quiet. Dr. Lisa Hayes, the human psychologist assigned to the station, noticed it first. She had been studying alien behavior for years, but now she found herself studying her own people. The humans weren't crying. They weren't panicking. They just stood in small groups, talking in low voices, their faces empty of expression. "This isn't normal," Lisa told Jake when she found him in the corridor. "Humans should be showing more emotion, grief, anger, something. But look at them." Jake looked around. Human technicians were still working at their stations, but their movements were different. Precise, mechanical. Human security guards stood at their posts with straight backs and cold eyes. Even the civilian researchers were walking differently, like soldiers on a mission. "Maybe they're in shock," Jake suggested. "No," Lisa said, shaking her head. I've studied trauma responses. This is something else. This is calculation. The emergency council session was called for that afternoon. Representatives from all major species gathered in the Great Hall, a massive dome with seats for hundreds of delegates. The Krillian ambassador, a huge creature with thick armor plates and glowing red eyes, sat in his section looking bored. To him, destroying a human colony was probably less important than choosing what to eat for lunch. Jake walked to the central, speaking platform. All eyes turned to him. He could feel the aliens waiting for the usual human response. Protests, demands for justice, emotional speeches about the value of life. Then they would offer some minor punishment for the Krillians. The humans would accept it sadly and life would go on. But Jake surprised them. His voice was calm, almost friendly. Distinguished delegates, he said, we have received confirmation that the Krillian Empire deliberately destroyed the human colony on Kepler 442b, killing 3 million innocent civilians. The Krillian ambassador shifted in his seat, but said, nothing. Jake continued, still speaking in that same calm tone. The Galactic Council has exactly 36 hours to arrest the Krillian officials responsible for this genocide and turn them over to human custody for trial and execution. A shocked silence filled the hall. Several alien delegates looked at each other in confusion. The Altarian representative actually laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Or what? Asked Ambassador Vextar of the Dominion, his tentacles waving, in amusement. What will the peaceful humans do if we refuse? Jake smiled. It was not a warm smile. You'll find out. The Krillian ambassador stood up, his massive form casting shadows across the floor. The Empire does not bow to threats from inferior species, he growled. Your colony was destroyed as a lesson. Perhaps you need another lesson to understand your place in this galaxy. Jake nodded slowly. Perhaps we do, he said. Perhaps we all do. As Jake left the platform, every human in the hall followed him. Out. They moved as one group, silent and organized. The aliens watched them go, most still smiling at what they thought was just another human emotional outburst. They had no idea what they had just unleashed. Back in the human section of the station, Jake called an emergency meeting. Every human on Nexus Prime gathered in their conference room. Military officers, scientists, doctors, engineers, even the cleaning staff. They all looked at Jake with the same expression. Waiting. Send the signal, Jake said quietly. Commander. Nancy White, the senior military officer, nodded and activated her communication device. She spoke only 2 words. Broken arrow. Across the galaxy, on every human ship, base, and colony, people received that message. 2 words that hadn't been used in over 150 years. 2 words that meant the time for patience was over. The aliens thought they knew humans. They thought humans were weak because they chose peace. They thought humans were helpless because they preferred negotiation to war. They were about to learn the difference between choosing to be peaceful and being unable to fight. In the depths of space, things that had been sleeping for generations began to wake up, and humanity stopped pretending to be harmless. The first sign that something was terribly wrong came 12 hours after Jake Martinez delivered his ultimatum. Across the galaxy, every human ship simply vanished, not destroyed, not captured. They just stopped appearing on alien tracking systems. Admiral Zekthon of the Altarian Defense Force was the first to notice. He was monitoring the regular patrol routes near the Centauri system when 6 human cargo ships that had been traveling there for months suddenly disappeared from his screens. Technical error, his aide suggested. Human technology is always breaking down. But then reports started coming in from everywhere. Human research vessels exploring distant nebulae were gone. Human trade ships carrying supplies between worlds had vanished. Even the small human courier ships that delivered mail throughout the galaxy had disappeared without a trace. Within 6 hours, there wasn't a single human ship visible on any alien tracking system in the entire galaxy. The Galactic Council called an emergency meeting. Delegates from dozens of species gathered via hologram, all asking the same question. Where had the humans gone? They're hiding like cowards, declared General Thrak of the Krillian Empire. His massive form filled the projection screen, red eyes glowing with amusement. Probably running back to their home system to cry about their dead colony. But some of the older, wiser aliens were starting to worry. Ambassador Veltar of the hegemony had been in galactic politics for over 3 centuries. He had seen many wars, many conflicts. He knew that when an enemy disappeared, it usually meant they were preparing something. How many ships did the humans have? He asked his intelligence officer. The Zathari aide checked his data pad with quick, nervous movements. According to our records, approximately 4,000 vessels of various sizes across the galaxy, sir. And how many have we accounted for? 0, sir. We cannot locate a single human vessel anywhere. Veltar felt a chill run through his scaled body. You didn't hide 4,000 ships by accident. Meanwhile, on Nexus Prime, the remaining human delegation was packing their belongings, but they weren't panicking or rushing. Instead, they moved with calm precision, like people following a plan they had practiced many times. Dr. Lisa Hayes was in her laboratory, calmly downloading decades of research onto portable storage devices. Her Vorthon research partner, Dr. Aint Coixtor, watched her with confusion. Lisa, he said, his forearms gesturing wildly. What is happening? Where are your ships going? Why are your people leaving? Lisa paused in her work and looked at her colleague. They had worked together for 8 years. She had helped him with his family problems, celebrated his research discoveries, and considered him a friend. But now, looking at him, she saw something different. She saw a member of a species that had stood by and done nothing while human children were murdered. Tell me, Kixtor, she said quietly. In all our years working together, did you ever wonder why humans were so good at organizing things? Why we always knew exactly where to find supplies, how to coordinate between different groups, how to plan for disasters that hadn't happened yet? Well, you are naturally good at logistics, Kixtor replied, confused by the question. Lisa smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. No. We're naturally good at survival, and survival means always having a backup plan. She finished packing her equipment and headed for the door. As she left, she said something that would haunt Kixtor for the rest of his life. We've been mapping every world in this galaxy for 200 years. Every military base, every government building, every power plant, every communications array. We told ourselves it was for scientific research, but deep down we always knew this day might come. Similar conversations were happening throughout the galaxy. Human scientists, engineers, doctors, and researchers who had worked alongside aliens for decades were quietly packing up and leaving. They said polite goodbyes, finished their work, and then simply disappeared. Professor Ben Carter had been teaching engineering at the prestigious Altarian Technical Institute for 20 years. His students loved him, his colleagues respected him, and he had helped design some of the most advanced systems in Altarian space. On the day after the Kepler colony was destroyed, he cleaned out his office and prepared to leave. His best student, a young Altarian named Zixtel, found him packing. Professor Carter, where are you going? Classes start again next week. Ben looked at the young alien he had mentored for 3 years. He had helped Zixtel with complex engineering problems, had stayed late to explain difficult concepts, had written recommendation letters for advanced programs. In many ways, the young Altarian was like a son to him. Zixtel, Ben said gently. Do you remember the lesson I taught about system vulnerabilities? About how every complex network has weak points that can bring down the whole structure? Yes, sir. You said it was important to understand these weaknesses so we could protect against them. Ben nodded. I want you to look very carefully at every system I helped design over the past 20 years. Look at every improvement I suggested, every efficiency I recommended, every upgrade I helped install. And then I want you to ask yourself, what if those weren't improvements? What if they were something else? Zixtel stared at his teacher, confusion growing into horror as he began to understand. Ben picked up his bags and walked to the door. Take care of yourself, son, and remember what I taught you about backup plans. Similar scenes were playing, out across the galaxy, but nowhere was the reaction more dramatic than in the Krillian Empire itself. The Krillians had always been proud of their military might, their advanced weapons, their powerful warships. They had built their empire through conquest and held it through fear. So when Admiral Kate Williams appeared on every Krillian communication channel simultaneously, they were shocked. Not just because she had somehow bypassed all their security systems, but because they had never heard of her before. Kate was a small woman, barely 5 feet tall, with gray hair and kind eyes. She looked like someone's grandmother, not a military commander. She wore a simple uniform with no decorations, no medals, no signs of rank that the Krillians could recognize. "Citizens of the Krillian Empire," she said in a voice as calm as still water. "My name is Admiral Kate Williams of the Human Deep Space Fleet. You have never heard of me because until today, my fleet was classified. We are what humans call a contingency force, ships and crews that only exist if something terrible happens." The image switched to show a massive starship unlike anything in the galactic databases. It was sleek, dark, and covered in weapon systems that the Krillians didn't recognize. "This is the HSS Retribution," Kate continued. "She is one of 300 vessels in my fleet, ships that have been hidden in the empty spaces between stars, maintained by crews who have spent their entire careers preparing for a war they hoped would never come." The transmission ended, leaving the Krillian military command in stunned silence. General Thrak, the same officer who had called humans cowards just hours before, stared at the blank screen. "Find those ships," he ordered his staff. "Scan every system, every asteroid field, every nebula. I want to know where they're hiding." But his orders were pointless. The humans weren't hiding in systems or nebulae or asteroid fields. They were hiding in the dark, empty spaces between the stars, in regions so cold and empty that no one had ever thought to look there. As the second day began, the galaxy started to realize that humanity's disappearance wasn't a retreat. It was preparation. And somewhere in the darkness of space, Admiral Kate Williams stood on the bridge of her impossible ship, looking at displays showing the positions of every alien military vessel in the galaxy. The hunt was about to begin. The war lasted exactly 72 hours, but it wasn't really a war. Wars had battles, strategy meetings, and time for both sides to plan. This was something else. This was an execution. It began at the ruins of Kepler 442b. The Krillian Second Fleet arrived at the dead planet expecting to find human memorial ships or rescue vessels searching for survivors. Instead, they found Captain Ryan Bell waiting for them in a single human destroyer called the Vengeance. Admiral Krosk, commander of the Krillian fleet, laughed when he saw the lone human ship. One small vessel against his entire fleet of 200 warships. It was almost insulting. "Human vessel," Krosk transmitted. "You will surrender immediately or be destroyed. You are outnumbered 200 to 1. Captain Bell's response was broadcast on all frequencies so that every ship in the system could hear it. His voice was calm, almost bored. "Admiral Krosk, you killed 3 million innocent people on this planet. Men, women, children, babies who had never hurt anyone. You turned them to ash because you wanted to make a point in some trade negotiation." "They were weak," Krosk replied. "The strong survive, the weak die. This is the way of the galaxy." "No," Bell said quietly. "This is the way it was. Today you learn the new way." What happened next changed galactic warfare forever. The Vengeance didn't fire weapons. Instead, it transmitted something. Every Krillian ship in the fleet suddenly lost power. Their engines shut down, their weapons went offline, their life support systems failed. In seconds, 200 of the most advanced warships in the galaxy became floating coffins. "Impossible," Krosk gasped as emergency power flickered on in his command ship. "Our systems are hardened against all known electronic attacks." "They're hardened against all known alien attacks," Bell corrected. "But we helped you design those systems, remember? Every circuit, every processor, every line of code. We've been building backdoors into alien technology for 2 centuries. We told ourselves it was for compatibility, for maintenance, for helping you upgrade your systems, but we always knew this day might come." As Krosk watched in horror, his ships began destroying themselves. not from outside attack but from within. Their own computers turned against them, their own weapons fired randomly, their own navigation systems sent them spinning out of control. "You have two choices," Bell said. "Order your crews to abandon ship, or watch them all die when your reactors overload in approximately 6 minutes." Krosk gave the evacuation order. Across his fleet, Krillian warriors who had conquered dozens of worlds fled their own ships in escape pods. They watched from the cold of space as their proud warships tore themselves apart from the inside. But the humiliation of the Second Fleet was just the beginning. Across the Krillian Empire, every system that humans had ever helped design began to fail at the same time. Power grids that human engineers had improved shut down, plunging entire worlds into darkness. Communication networks that human technicians had upgraded went silent. Transportation systems that human advisors had helped build simply stopped working. Within hours, the mighty Krillian Empire was thrust back into the Stone Age. On the capital world of Krylos Prime, General Thrak stood in his command center watching reports flood in from across the Empire. Every military base was offline. Every government building was without power. Every major city was in chaos. "How is this possible?" he roared at his staff. "Humans don't have this kind of technology. They don't have this kind of power." His intelligence officer, a nervous Krillian named Vex, was reading reports with shaking hands. "Sir, it appears that every human who has worked in our empire over the past 2 centuries was an agent. The teacher who helped design our education computers, the doctor who upgraded our medical systems, the engineer who improved our factories. All of them were working together." Thrak felt something he had never experienced before. Fear. "What about our military networks, our classified systems?" "Compromised, sir. All of them. The human technician who installed our security updates 20 years ago apparently built hidden access points into everything. Even our most secret facilities are under human control." But the Krillians weren't the only ones suffering. The Altarian Confederacy discovered that their entire space traffic control system had been quietly modified by human programmers over the decades. Now those same systems were directing Altarian ships to crash into each other. In one day, they lost more vessels to accidents than they had in the last 50 years of warfare. The Vorthan Dominion found that their communication satellites, upgraded with human technology, were now broadcasting embarrassing government secrets to the entire galaxy. Private conversations between Dominion leaders were being played on public channels, revealing corruption, lies, and plans for illegal activities. The Zathari Collective watched in horror as their automated defense systems turned on their own cities. Weapon platforms that were supposed to protect them began firing on government buildings, forcing their leaders to evacuate the capital. Dr. Chris Murphy, a human engineer who had spent 30 years helping the hegemony build their industrial complexes, sent a message to his former colleagues as their factories shut down one by one. "For 3 decades I worked among you," his transmission said. "I helped you build better machines, more efficient systems, cleaner energy. You welcomed me because I made your lives easier. But every improvement I made, every system I designed, every process I created had one hidden feature. It could be turned off remotely. Every single one." The message continued as hegemony worlds lost power across their entire civilization. "You always asked why humans were so helpful, why we shared our knowledge so freely. You thought it was because we were weak and wanted to please you. The truth is we were building the tools to destroy you if you ever forced our hand." But perhaps the most terrifying revelation came from Lieutenant Commander Amy Stone, who had been working as a cultural exchange officer on various alien worlds for 15 years. Her message was broadcast to every species in the galaxy. "My name is Amy Stone, and I am a human intelligence operative. For 15 years I have been living among you, learning your languages, studying your cultures, mapping your societies. I am not alone. There are thousands of us, hidden in every government, every military, every important organization in the galaxy." The broadcast showed footage of human agents revealing themselves across dozens of worlds. Teachers, doctors, mechanics, clerks, janitors, advisors. People who had been part of alien society for so long that nobody questioned their presence anymore. "We know where your leaders live," Amy continued. "We know your military secrets, your economic weaknesses, your political scandals. We know which of your officials take bribes, which of your generals are cowards, which of your politicians have secret deals with your enemies. We know everything because you trusted us, and we have been watching and learning for 200 years." The galactic community realized they were facing something they had never encountered before, a species that had been preparing for war by pretending to be at peace. Humans hadn't built a traditional military. They had built something far more dangerous, a network of knowledge, influence, and control that reached into every corner of galactic civilization. As the third day began, alien leaders across the galaxy faced a terrible choice. They could continue fighting an enemy that had already defeated them, or they could surrender to the species they had spent centuries dismissing as weak. The proud Krillian Empire, which had existed for 3,000 years, lasted less than 3 days once humanity stopped pretending to be harmless, and in the depths of space, Admiral Kate Williams watched the reports from her flagship and spoke words that would echo through galactic history. Phase 1, complete. Beginning Phase 2, new. Management. The age of alien dominance was over. The age of human oversight had begun. 6 months after the 72-hour war ended, the galaxy looked very different. The great assembly hall of Nexus Prime was full once again, but this time the seating arrangement had changed. Where humans once sat in a small section at the back barely noticed by the other species, now they occupied the central platform. Every alien delegate faced them, waiting to hear what the new rulers of the galaxy would decide. Admiral Pete Johnson stood at the podium, where Jake Martinez had delivered his ultimatum half a year ago. Pete was a big man with broad shoulders and gray hair, but his most striking feature was his eyes. They were kind but hard, like a father who had been forced to discipline his children after they had done something terrible. "Distinguished delegates," Pete began, his voice carrying easily through the silent hall. "We are here today to establish the new rules that will govern our galaxy. Rules that will ensure what happened to Kepler 442b never happens again." The audience, the surviving alien leaders, sat quietly. Many of them were new faces. The old leadership of most species had either fled, been arrested, or simply disappeared during the chaos that followed humanity's retaliation. Those who remained had learned to listen when humans spoke. "For 200 years, Pete continued, humanity chose to be your partners, your helpers, your friends. We believed that kindness would be returned with kindness, that generosity would create peace, that patience would eventually lead to understanding. We were wrong." Ambassador Veltar of the Hegemony, one of the few old leaders who had survived, the transition, shifted uncomfortably in his seat. He remembered laughing at human weakness just months ago. Now his entire civilization depended on human mercy for basic services like electricity and communications. "The old Galactic Council is dissolved," Pete announced. "In its place, we established the Galactic Protection Authority. Humanity will oversee all interspecies relations, all conflicts, and all major decisions affecting the safety and well-being of innocent people throughout the galaxy." A young Altarian delegate raised her hand nervously. "What about our sovereignty, our right to govern ourselves?" Pete's expression softened slightly. "Dr. Zixana, isn't it? You were Professor Carter's student." She nodded, surprised that he knew her name. "Your teacher spoke highly of you," Pete said. "To answer your question, any species that demonstrates it can govern itself peacefully and treat its people justly will have complete autonomy. We have no interest in ruling you. But if you abuse your power, if you threaten innocence, if you commit genocide, then we will step in." Captain Sarah White, the new human administrator for galactic justice, stepped forward with a data pad. "We have established protection zones around 47 species that have been victims of aggression in the past century. Any attack on these protected worlds will be considered an attack on humanity itself." The implications were clear. The Krillian Empire had been the strongest military force in the galaxy, and humanity had destroyed it in 3 days. No other species wanted to test human resolve. But the new system wasn't just about punishment. It was also about protection and progress. Dr. Jenny Adams, humanity's new science coordinator, announced the establishment of joint research programs that would share human technology with peaceful species. We are offering medical advances that could extend lifespans by centuries, energy systems that could power entire civilizations cleanly, and agricultural techniques that could end hunger on any world. A Zathari representative leaned forward, eagerly. "What would you want in return?" "Peace," Jenny replied simply. "Help us build a galaxy where children can grow up safely, where conflicts are resolved through dialogue, where no one has to fear being murdered for someone else's political gain." The transformation wasn't limited to politics. Across the galaxy, human-supervised reconstruction was taking place. On worlds where infrastructure had been damaged during the war, human engineers worked alongside alien workers to build better, more resilient systems. But this time, the aliens knew exactly who was really in charge. On Krylos Prime, former General Thrak worked in a food distribution center, helping to feed refugees from the collapsed empire. The proud warrior who had once commanded fleets now spent his days carrying supplies and cleaning dishes. He was not a prisoner. He could leave any time he wanted. But where would he go? The only jobs available were the ones humans created, and they all involved helping people instead of hurting them. "Why do you let me work here?" Thrak asked Mike Torres, the human supervisor, one day. "I ordered a tax on human civilians. I celebrated when your people died." Mike looked at the former general, seeing not a monster but a broken old soldier. "Because everyone deserves a chance to do better," he said. "You can't bring back the people who died, but you can spend the rest of your life helping people live." The conversation that would define the new era happened between Jake Martinez and Elder Zektar of the Hegemony. The old alien had requested a private meeting, and they sat together in Jake's office on Nexus Prime, the same room where Jake had first learned about the destruction of Kepler 442b. "I must ask," Zektar said, his ancient voice heavy with regret, "what guarantee can you give that humanity will not become the very thing you fought against? What stops you from becoming conquerors yourselves?" Jake was quiet for a long moment, looking out the window at the stars. "The same thing that stopped us for 200 years, he finally answered. "Our choice." "But you have such power now," Zektar pressed. "Absolute power. History shows that such power corrupts." Jake turned back to the old alien. "Elder, let me tell you something about humans. We evolved on a world that tried to kill us every single day. Predators, diseases, natural disasters, climate changes that could wipe out entire civilizations. We survived not because we were the strongest or the fastest, but because we learned to work together and take care of each other." He stood and walked to his desk where a picture showed children playing in a park on the rebuilt Kepler colony. Every human child grows up hearing stories about the monsters in the dark, but we also grow up learning that the best way to fight monsters is to make sure everyone else is safe first. We could conquer the galaxy in a month if we wanted to. Instead, we choose to protect it. And if future generations of humans forget this lesson? Jake smiled, but it was a sad smile. "Then I suppose some other species will have to teach us the same lesson we taught you. The universe has a way of humbling those who think they're too powerful to be stopped." A year after the war, the Kepler 442b colony was rebuilt. 3 million new people had volunteered to settle there. Not just humans, but members of dozens of species who wanted to live in a place that represented hope for the future. At the center of the new capital city stood a simple memorial. It was not a monument to human victory or alien defeat. Instead, it was a garden where children of all species could play together. At the entrance, carved in stone in every known galactic language, was a simple message. They were loved. They were innocent. They were protected. Never again. Admiral Kate Williams, now retired from military service, worked as a teacher at the memorial school. She taught history to young aliens and humans alike, making sure they understood both the mistakes of the past and the possibilities of the future. "Why did the war happen?" a young Krillian student asked one day. Kate looked at the child, seeing hope instead of the hatred that had defined his people for so long. Because sometimes good people have to do terrible things to stop evil people from doing worse things. But the real tragedy isn't that we had to fight. The tragedy is that it took so long for everyone to learn that kindness is not weakness, and that patience is not the same as powerlessness. In the depths of space, human ships continued their eternal patrol. But now they were not alone. Alien vessels flew alongside them, crews from dozens of species working together to keep the peace that humanity had enforced. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Humanity's greatest strength was not their hidden weapons or their secret plans. It was their choice to use their power to protect rather than to conquer, to heal rather than to hurt, to build rather than to destroy. And every day, in schools and homes across the galaxy, children learned the most important lesson of all, that true strength comes not from the ability to destroy your enemies, but from the wisdom to help them become your friends. The age of human oversight had begun, but more importantly, the age of galactic peace had finally arrived.